The little girl's mitten was soaked through, and the string lights outside the grocery store kept blinking like they couldn't decide what to feel. Marcus held his phone in his cracked gloved hand, thumb hovering over the keypad, because he didn't know who to call when a kid wasn't yours but was crying like it was the end of her world. The Starbucks cup someone left on the cart corral had gone cold and crusted at the lid. The girl's cheeks were red from the wind, and her breath came out in fast, scared puffs. A security guard stood 10 feet away, talking into his radio like this was a problem to manage, not a person to hold. Marcus crouched down anyway, because the girl kept whispering one thing over and over, like a prayer she couldn't stop. "I can't find my mom." Marcus lived on the 3rd floor of a tired apartment building in South Shore, Chicago, the kind that smelled like old heat and lemon cleaner in the hallway. The radiator in his unit clanked like it was arguing with itself. On most mornings, he woke up before his alarm because his brain never really shut off. Even in sleep, it kept counting. Rent. Bus fare. The electric bill that had a red stamp on it last week. The grocery list he could never finish without crossing things out. He was 17, but he moved through the world like someone older. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. His mom, Renee, worked the night shift at a nursing home and came home with her feet swollen and her shoulders tight, like she was always bracing for something. She tried to protect Marcus from the stress, but stress had a way of leaking through the walls anyway. It showed up in the way she stared at the kitchen sink a little too long. In the way she apologized when there was nothing to apologize for. In the way she kept saying, "We're gonna be okay," like the words could do the work of money. Marcus went to school, but his mind was never fully there. He sat in class with his hoodie up, listening enough to pass, saving his real attention for the rest of his life. His after-school job was at a grocery store near the lake, a chain store with bright floors and holiday music that played so often it stopped sounding cheerful and started sounding tired. In December, every shift felt longer. Everybody looked rushed. Everybody sounded short. People bought expensive snacks and big hams and decorations, and Marcus rang them up with a steady face while he thought about the frozen pizza in his freezer that was supposed to last 2 more days. He didn't hate people for having more. He just felt tired watching it happen so close to him, like standing outside a warm house and seeing a family laugh through the window. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was the quiet ache of wanting normal. Wanting to wake up without dread. Wanting his mom to come home and smile without forcing it. Wanting Christmas to feel like a day instead of another reminder. That year, Christmas felt heavier because of one small thing that had happened in November. Marcus had applied for a paid internship program at a community tech center, something his guidance counselor kept pushing because she said he was smart, and smart kids needed exits. Marcus had filled out the form on his phone because they didn't have a computer at home anymore. He'd written his essay on the Notes app, thumbs stiff from the cold while waiting for the bus. He'd hit submit and felt something rare for him, a little spark of hope that didn't immediately burn out. 2 weeks later, he got an email saying he didn't make it. No explanation, just polite words that sounded like a closed door. He stared at the screen until it blurred. Then he got up and went to work like it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered because he had let himself imagine a version of life where he wasn't always scraping. Where he could help his mom without losing himself. Where he could look at the future without flinching. On the afternoon of Christmas Eve, the store was packed. The air smelled like cinnamon pine cones by the entrance and hot fried chicken from the deli. Marcus had been on his feet for 6 hours, helping bag groceries, pushing carts, running to grab items for customers who didn't want to lose their place in line. His manager kept walking by with a tight smile, repeating, "We're almost there," like the day was a hill they had to climb. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket around 6:20 p.m. He didn't check it right away. Phones meant problems. A text from his mom asking if he could pick up medicine. A notification about a bill. A message from a friend who needed something. When he finally glanced, it was a voicemail notification. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But something in him shifted, the way it does when you feel like the world is trying to get your attention. He stepped into the narrow space by the employee lockers, where it smelled like wet coats and cheap deodorant, and he pressed play. A woman's voice filled his ear, calm but strained, like she was doing her best not to panic. "Hi, Marcus. I hope this is the right number. I found your application through the tech center. This is Ms. Daly. Please call me back as soon as you can. There might have been a mistake. I'm so sorry. Please call." His throat went dry. He listened again, then again, as if the message might change. Mistake. Sorry. Please call. He didn't know what to do with good news when it showed up. Good news felt suspicious, like it was going to turn into something else if he touched it too fast. He started to dial, then stopped. His hands were shaking. He told himself to breathe. He told himself to wait until his break. He told himself not to get his hopes up. He walked back out to the front, trying to keep his face normal. The holiday music was playing something about a perfect Christmas, and it felt almost rude. People were arguing softly near the self-checkout. Someone dropped a carton of eggs and swore under their breath. The security guard was near the sliding doors, scanning the crowd with bored eyes. Then Marcus heard it. Not loud, not dramatic, but sharp enough to cut through everything. A small, thin sob that sounded like a kid trying not to cry and failing anyway. He turned and saw her near the cart corral outside the entrance, half hidden behind a line of metal shopping carts. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, wearing a pink coat that looked too light for the cold. One mitten was missing, and her hair was sticking out from under a knit hat like she'd been tugging at it. She kept looking back toward the parking lot, then toward the door, then back again, like she was trapped in a loop. The security guard stepped toward her, already talking into his radio. Marcus watched for 1 second and felt something heavy and familiar in his chest. That helpless feeling. That sense of being small in a world that moved too fast. He'd felt it as a kid when his mom's bus was late and the sun was going down, when every minute felt like it meant something bad. Marcus didn't think. He just moved. He walked outside into the bite of the wind, the cold slipping under his jacket, and he crouched down in front of her like he had all the time in the world. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice low, steady. "You okay?" The girl's eyes flicked to him, wide and shiny. She didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled. "I can't find my mom," she whispered. "She was right there. And then she wasn't." Marcus felt his own phone vibrating again in his pocket, like the universe didn't know how to take turns. He ignored it. He looked at the girl's missing mitten, the way her fingers were turning pale from the cold, and he swallowed hard. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she said, and her voice cracked like she hated how scared it sounded. "Okay, Lily," Marcus said, and even though he was tired and broke and unsure of everything in his own life, his voice stayed firm. "We're gonna figure it out. Tell me what your mom looks like." Lily opened her mouth to answer, and Marcus realized, in that moment, that whatever was about to happen next would not be about grand miracles or perfect endings. It would be about minutes. About choices. About whether a stranger cared enough to stay. And he stayed. Lily's mom turned out to be easier to describe than Marcus expected. She was tall, Lily said, with a grey scarf and boots that made a clicking sound on the floor. She smelled like oranges because she always kept one in her purse. Marcus nodded like he was filing everything into a system he trusted. He took off his own gloves and rubbed Lily's hands gently between his palms to warm them, the way his mom used to do for him at the bus stop when he was little. The security guard hovered nearby, talking less now, watching Marcus with a look that mixed relief and caution. They walked back inside together, Lily's small hand wrapped tightly around Marcus's finger. The automatic doors slid open, letting in a rush of noise and heat. The store felt louder than before, brighter, like everything had been turned up. Marcus scanned faces as they moved slowly down the front aisle. He tried not to rush, even though his chest felt tight. Rushing scared kids. He knew that much. "Did your mom say where she was going?" Marcus asked. "She said the bathroom," Lily said. "But it was taking too long." Marcus nodded. He remembered being that age, time stretching into something scary. He guided Lily toward the restrooms near the pharmacy. Outside the women's room, a small line had formed. People shifted their weight and checked their phones. A woman with tired eyes glanced down at Lily and softened. "She in there?" the woman asked gently. "I think so," Marcus said. They waited. Lily rocked slightly on her heels, chewing on her sleeve. Marcus crouched again so they were eye level. He told her about the holiday cookies his store sold that always tasted better than they looked. He told her his mom burned toast every morning and still ate it. Lily let out a tiny laugh that surprised both of them. Then a woman burst out of the restroom, eyes wide, scanning the crowd. She dropped her phone when she saw Lily. "Oh my God," the woman said, rushing forward and pulling Lily into her arms so tightly it looked like she was afraid Lily might disappear again. "I was gone 2 minutes. 2 minutes." Lily buried her face in her mom's coat. The woman's shoulders shook as she held her. Marcus stood up slowly, suddenly unsure of where to put his hands, his body buzzing with leftover adrenaline. "Thank you," the woman said, looking at him over Lily's head. Her eyes were red. "Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done." "It's okay," Marcus said, even though he knew it wasn't. "She was just scared." The woman nodded, pulling back to look at Lily's face, checking her like she was counting pieces. She noticed Lily's missing mitten. "Where's the other one?" Lily shrugged. "I don't know." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pair of thin gloves, old and frayed at the fingertips. He held them out awkwardly. "She can have these. At least for now." The woman hesitated, then took them with both hands like they were something valuable. "Thank you," she said again. "Really?" She introduced herself as Karen. Her voice still shook a little. She asked Marcus his name, where he worked. He answered simply, already feeling the moment closing, like a door swinging shut. These things didn't usually last. People thanked you and moved on. That was life. Karen reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. Marcus shook his head immediately. "It's fine," he said. "I'm good." She paused, studying his face, like she was seeing something else there. "Okay," she said quietly. "But can I at least buy you dinner? Or coffee? Something?" Marcus almost said no out of habit. Saying yes felt dangerous. It felt like stepping into a space he wasn't sure he belonged. But Lily was watching him now, her eyes curious, calm again. And something about that look made it harder to refuse. "Coffee's okay," he said. They walked to the small cafe inside the store, the one most people ignored. Karen ordered hot chocolate for Lily, extra marshmallows. Marcus ordered a plain coffee, black, because it was cheaper and because sweetness sometimes made him uncomfortable. They sat at a small round table by the window. Outside, snow had started to fall, light and uneven. Karen wrapped both hands around her cup and let out a long breath. "I don't usually lose track of her," she said, more to herself than to him. "Today just got away from me." Marcus nodded. "It happens." Karen looked at him again. "You handled that really well," she said. "You're good with kids." He shrugged. "I had to grow up fast." Something shifted in her expression, like she understood that sentence more than it seemed to say. They sat quietly for a moment, the noise of the store fading into the background. Marcus felt his phone vibrate again. He glanced at it without thinking this time. Another missed call. Same unknown number. Karen noticed. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Marcus said, though his heart had started to race again. He hesitated, then added, "Maybe. I'm waiting on something." She smiled softly. "I hope it's good." He didn't answer right away. Hope was complicated. Hope had burned him before. But sitting there, watching Lily blow on her hot chocolate, watching Karen relax inch by inch, he felt something unfamiliar. Not joy exactly. Relief. The kind that comes when you realize the world can still surprise you in small ways. Marcus finally stepped away to call back the number. He stood near the window, watching snow collect on the curb as he dialed. Miss Daly answered on the second ring. "Marcus," she said, and he could hear the apology in her voice. "I'm so glad you called. We made an error. Your application was marked incomplete by mistake. The spot is yours, if you still want it." The words hit him slowly, like warmth spreading after being cold too long. He leaned his forehead against the glass. "Yes," he said. "I want it." When he hung up, his hands were shaking again, but this time for a different reason. He went back to the table, sat down, and took a sip of his coffee. It tasted bitter and real. Karen looked at him, reading his face. "Good news." He nodded, unable to stop the small smile that slipped through. "Yeah," he said. "I think it is." Lily grinned like it was her win too. Marcus felt something open up inside him, just a crack. Not a miracle. Just a connection. A reminder that even on heavy days, something could still change. The internship didn't start right away. That was the first thing Marcus learned after the call wore off and reality crept back in. There were forms to fill out, an orientation scheduled 2 weeks out, background checks, transit passes that needed approval. None of it erased the bills on the kitchen table or the way his mom's shoulders sagged when she kicked off her shoes at night. Hope didn't cancel stress. It just sat next to it, awkward and fragile. Marcus didn't tell Renee right away. Not because he didn't want to share it, but because he was scared of what would happen if it slipped away again. He'd been burned enough times to know that celebrating too early felt like tempting fate. So he kept going to work. He kept waking up before his alarm. He kept carrying the weight like he always had. But something had shifted. It showed up in small ways. He stood a little straighter. He caught himself thinking about the future without immediately shutting the thought down. On the bus ride to school, he looked out the window instead of staring at the floor. And sometimes, when the city blurred past him, he thought about Lily's hand in his, how quickly fear could turn into calm when someone stayed. Karen texted him 2 days after Christmas. Just a simple message. "Hope you're doing okay. Lily keeps asking about you." Marcus stared at the screen for a long time before responding. He didn't want to read too much into it. Adults had lives. Parents were busy. This wasn't a movie where strangers became family overnight. Still, the message warmed him in a way he hadn't expected. He wrote back, "I'm good. Glad she's okay." They exchanged a few more messages over the next week. Nothing heavy. Just updates. Lily lost her glove again. Karen burned dinner and ordered pizza. Marcus mentioned school, work, the internship starting soon. Karen told him she worked in healthcare administration and that December was always brutal. Then one night, after a double shift that left Marcus's feet aching and his patience thin, his mom was waiting for him at the small kitchen table. The overhead light was off. Only the glow from the stove clock lit the room. That usually meant something serious. "Sit," Renee said softly. Marcus's stomach dropped. He sat across from her, hands folded, already bracing. "The landlord called today," she said. "They're raising the rent in March." Marcus closed his eyes for a second. March wasn't far. He did the math without trying. The numbers didn't work. They never did. "I can pick up more hours," he said immediately. "I'll talk to my manager." Renee shook her head. "You're already working too much. You're a kid." "I'm not," he said, a little too fast. Then he stopped himself. He took a breath. "I'll figure it out." She reached across the table and took his hand. Her palm was rough from years of work. "I don't want you sacrificing everything," she said. "You deserve a life too." The words landed heavy. Deserve was a word Marcus didn't trust. Life felt like something you earned through endurance, not something you were owed. He nodded anyway, because arguing wouldn't change anything. That night, he lay awake listening to the radiator knock and the distant sound of sirens outside. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another text from Karen. Random question. Do you like soup? He almost laughed. Depends, he wrote back. Lily and I made too much, she replied. If you're nearby tomorrow, you can take some. No pressure. Marcus stared at the message. Soup meant kindness, but it also meant crossing a line he wasn't sure existed. Accepting help felt dangerous. It felt like admitting need. And need was something the world punished. The next afternoon, after school, Marcus found himself walking toward Karen's address anyway. A modest apartment building in a quieter neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Just clean. Normal. His chest tightened as he buzzed the intercom. Karen opened the door with a tired smile. Lily peeked out from behind her leg, then ran forward and hugged Marcus's waist without asking. He froze for half a second, then gently hugged her back. Inside, the apartment smelled like vegetables and something warm. Soup sat on the stove. Karen handed him a container and didn't make it a big deal. They talked about nothing and everything. School. Work. Lily's obsession with drawing cats. At one point, Karen looked at Marcus carefully. You don't have to be strong all the time, she said quietly. The words hit harder than he expected. He felt something in his chest crack, just a little. He looked down at his hands, at the scars and calluses that told a story he never talked about. I don't know how not to be, he said. Karen nodded. That makes sense. On the walk home, the soup container warm against his side, Marcus felt the weight of it all pressing in. The internship. The rent. His mom. The fear of hope. It all collided in his head until it was hard to breathe. He stopped on the sidewalk, leaned against a streetlight, and let himself feel it. Not just the stress, but the sadness underneath. The exhaustion. The grief for a childhood that had ended early. He realized then that the breaking point wasn't about money or opportunity. It was about letting himself believe he mattered enough to accept help, to imagine more, to stay open even when it hurt. He wiped his eyes before anyone could see. He straightened up and kept walking. Because breaking didn't mean stopping. Sometimes it meant bending enough to survive. January came in grey and slow, like the city was tired from pretending to be festive. The snow along the sidewalks turned dirty and heavy. People stopped saying happy holidays and went back to rushing. Marcus noticed the change right away. It felt familiar. The world resetting to something harder. The internship started on a Monday morning that was colder than expected. Marcus stood at the bus stop with his hands deep in his pockets, breath fogging the air. His transit pass was new and stiff. He kept touching it, like it might disappear if he didn't. The building was downtown, all glass and clean lines, a place that made him feel underdressed and out of place the second he walked in. The first day wasn't magical. No one clapped when he arrived. No one told him he was special. They handed him a badge, showed him where to sit, explained rules in a flat voice. Marcus felt awkward, quiet, unsure when to speak. He made small mistakes. He asked questions that made his face heat up. But when he went home that night, exhausted in a different way than usual, he felt something settle inside him. He had shown up. He had stayed. Renee noticed the change before he said anything. She watched him pack his bag the next morning, careful and focused. You got something going on, she said. Marcus hesitated, then told her everything. The voicemail. The mistake. The internship. The soup. Karen and Lily. He expected questions or worry. Instead, his mom covered her mouth and cried quietly at the kitchen counter. I'm proud of you, she said when she could speak. Not just for this. For who you are. The words sat with him all day. Proud was another word he didn't trust, but he wanted to. The rent increase didn't disappear. Money stayed tight. Some nights, Marcus still lay awake doing math in his head. But the internship came with a small stipend. Not enough to fix everything, but enough to breathe a little easier. Enough to buy groceries without counting every item twice. Enough to imagine March without panic. Karen and Lily stayed in his life, not as a miracle solution, but as something steadier. They met for soup again. Then for a walk. Then for coffee on a Sunday afternoon when Marcus didn't have work. Karen never asked him to explain himself. Lily never treated him like a hero. They just let him be there. One afternoon, Lily handed him a drawing. It showed 3 people holding hands in front of a grocery store with snow falling around them. Marcus was taller than the others, smiling in a way he barely recognized. "That's you," Lily said proudly. He stared at the picture longer than he meant to. He had never seen himself drawn as someone safe before. Spring came slowly. The snow melted. The air softened. Marcus learned new skills at the internship. He fixed small problems. He helped people who reminded him of himself. He realized that his past didn't make him weak. It made him attentive. It made him patient. One evening, months after Christmas, Marcus walked past the same grocery store where he'd met Lily. The string lights were gone. The cart corral stood empty. The Starbucks cups were different now, with spring colors instead of red. He stopped anyway. Just for a moment. He thought about how close he'd been to walking past her that night. How easy it would have been to say someone else would handle it. How much would have been lost in that small decision. Life hadn't turned perfect. There were still days when he felt behind. Days when the weight crept back in. But there was also something new. A sense that his presence mattered. That staying kind in a hard world was not naive. It was brave. Marcus pulled out his phone and texted Karen. "Hope you and Lily are good." She replied a minute later. "We are. Thanks for being part of our story." He slipped the phone back into his pocket and kept walking. The city moved around him like it always had, loud and imperfect and alive. And for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt like he was moving with it, not just surviving it.